Have you ever wished your mind came with a user manual? Well, it kind of does. Today, we're cracking open Patanjali's Yoga Sutras to look at two core ideas that are, essentially, the operating system for how our minds work.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the mind's 5 basic patterns. Then, we'll zoom in on pramāṇa, how we find truth, and viparyaya, the mind's mirages. We'll unpack the 3 ways we gain real knowledge, see what illusion looks like, and then bring it all home to see why this ancient wisdom is more relevant than ever.
Okay, let's get right into it. The mind's 5 patterns. You know that feeling, right? When your mind just won't stop, like it's running a marathon, jumping from one thing to the next without a break.
Yeah, that feeling? Well, the Yoga Sutras have a name for that. Patanjali calls this constant mental activity the vṛittis. Think of them as the nonstop fluctuations, the constant churning of the mind. The word vritti literally means whirlpool, which is such a perfect image, isn't it? These little eddies and currents of thought are what color our entire perception of reality. And if you think of your mind as an operating system, these vṛittis are the 5 main programs that are always running in the background.
So here are the 5. We've got pramāṇa, or right knowledge, viparyaya, wrong knowledge, vikalpa, which is imagination, nidra, deep sleep, and smriti, which is memory. Now, they're all fascinating, but for today, we are laser-focused on just the first 2. Why? Because understanding pramāṇa and viparyaya is the absolute key to telling the difference between what's real and what's just an illusion in our heads.
Okay, first up, pramāṇa. Think of this as your mind's internal compass. It's true north. It's the mental function that's all about generating solid, accurate, valid knowledge. It's how we see the world as it actually is.
So, pramāṇa is correct knowledge. It's information that's factually accurate, it leads you to truth, and here's the kicker. By its very definition, pramāṇa cannot be wrong. The big question then is, how do we get it? Well, lucky for us, Patanjali lays out 3 very specific valid pathways. And these aren't just 3 random paths. Patanjali actually sets them up in a kind of hierarchy of reliability. It gives us this incredible framework for how we can verify what's real. So here they are. First, we have pratyakṣa, which is your own direct perception. Then there's anumāna, or inference. And finally, āgama, which is testimony from a trusted source. These are the 3 tools in our mental toolkit for building an accurate map of reality. Let's start with the most foundational one.
All right, pratyakṣa, this is the bedrock. It's knowledge you get straight from your own 5 senses. It's what you personally see, hear, and feel. You know that saying, yoga is 1% theory and 99% practice? This is exactly why. Because your direct experience is a powerful kind of truth. It's your data, and it's hard to argue with.
This is the perfect example. I see the sun rise. I don't need to read it in a book or have someone tell me it's happening. My senses confirm it. That is pratyakṣa in its purest form. Simple, right? But what about things we can't see for ourselves?
Well, that brings us to number 2, anumāna, or inference. This is where we get to play detective. We take the facts we've already gathered through direct perception, and we use logic to reach a new conclusion. It's about connecting the dots. And honestly, this is the engine behind all scientific discovery and everyday problem solving. This is the classic example, and it's brilliant. You see smoke, that's your direct perception. You know from past experience that where there's smoke, there's usually fire. So even though you can't see the flames, you infer the fire exists. It's a critical tool, but there's still one more way we learn. And that third path is āgama, the knowledge we get from testimony. This could be a scientific paper, a wise teacher, a sacred text, basically any source that you deem reliable and trustworthy. Now, here's the crucial part. The strength of this knowledge depends entirely on the credibility of the source, and you can see how this becomes a huge challenge in our modern age of information overload. So, we've talked about how the mind gets things right. But what happens when it gets things wrong? That brings us to the flip side of the coin, the program that causes us the most trouble, viparyaya. This is the glitch in our mental operating system, the bug in the code. Viparyaya is false knowledge. It's when our perception doesn't match an object's true form. We mistake one thing for another. And this isn't just a small error, it's the root of our cognitive biases and so much of our daily anxiety and suffering. And here is the most famous example in all of yoga. You walk into a dark room and see a coiled shape on the floor. Your mind instantly screams, "Snake!" Your heart pounds, adrenaline floods your system. That's viparaya work.
But then you flip on a light and you see, oh, it's just a coil of rope. Now you have pramāṇa, correct perception. The key takeaway here is that your fear was 100% real even though the snake was not. The misperception had a very real physical impact.
And let's be honest, we do this all the time. You misread the tone of a short email and get upset for hours. You make a snap judgment about someone based on what they're wearing. You think you see a friend waving across the street, but it's a total stranger. These are all modern-day rope versus snake moments, little glitches of viparyaya that create totally unnecessary stress.
So you've got these two fundamental programs running in your head, one that seeks truth and one that creates illusions. What do we do with that? Well, this is where the practice of yoga really begins. It's all about getting better at recognizing which program is running at any given moment.
Let's just break it down. Pramāṇa is founded on reality, on what you can perceive and logically prove. The result? Clarity and understanding. Viparyaya, on the other hand, is founded on misperception, on illusion. The result of that? Confusion and so often suffering. So the whole yoga goal here is to cultivate pramāṇa, to strengthen that muscle so that you can more easily recognize and dispel viparyaya when it shows up.
Okay, this is all fascinating stuff, but why should you care about this ancient philosophy in the 21st century? Well, because this is probably one of the most practical mental toolkits you could ever ask for.
I mean, think about it. The ability to recognize that your anxiety is just a snake that's actually a rope? That's a superpower. You can literally reduce your own suffering. In an age of endless misinformation, you can use the 3 tests of pramāṇa to figure out what's real. You can train yourself to just pause before reacting, to question your automatic assumptions. Ultimately, it's about becoming a skilled observer of your own mind, learning to separate the facts from the fiction.
So this really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question you can ask yourself. As you go about your day and you watch that endless stream of thoughts, which ones are real, which ones are pramāṇa, and which are just illusions, little glitches of viparyaya? Simply by asking that question, you begin the profound practice of yoga, turning your attention inward to discover the nature of your own mind. Thanks so much for joining this explainer.